Good morning, everyone, again.
Good morning.
All right. Little funnies for you here. Gentleman is in an interview, three different gentlemen. The first gentleman says, the interviewer says, "What would you say is your greatest strength?" The interviewee says, "I have strong hindsight." That won't help us much now, I can see that. Another man's on a different interview, and the interviewer says, "So it says here on your application that you consider your memory to be one of your greatest strengths." And he says, "Absolutely." He says, "Could you give me an example of that?" "An example of what?" And the one I like the most is the interviewer asks, "What's your biggest strength again?" And he said, the interviewee takes a moment, gets his bag out, pulls out a piece of paper, and reads from it. "My biggest strength is that I am always prepared." I like that one the best. Each his own, right? Okay, if you remember last week when Francie put it up, I think she forgot to put that, or she didn't forget it. I'd given her one that said the title, Surrender to Strength, and then Denial to Affirmation. But I cut it in half because it was too long, and so that's what we're going to go over today, is surrender to your strength, or to strength. And as human beings, sometimes we think we control things that happen in our lives, don't we? A lot of times, I still do myself, think that we can control things that happen in our life, but we really don't. We have there's so many variables in life that we really don't control fully everything that happens in our life, which is actually a good thing, but we'll get into that here in a minute. We think, though, as human beings, though, that it's not a good thing. But what if we did control everything in our life? What would your life look like, you think? You probably have an ideal life in your mind, and have had it at some point in life, and thought of it, and if you bring it back to your mind right now, you may think of a certain way. But if that way was intended for you right now in this moment of your life, you would be there. And maybe you are, who knows of that. But God's intention for you may be a little bit different than what you had thought your ideal was of your life. Because like I said earlier, I think I said earlier, actually I don't even know if I said this, but I was thinking it, is that the things that we do in life, as far as being here as a human being, as a spiritual being, we are here as humans to carry out certain things. And it never ends, okay? So people think, sometimes they think that, I was divinely appointed to do this. And then you think when you do that, because you follow God's guidance, you think that life's over or something for you. But that's not the case. You have another assignment each and every time. It's kind of like in the Bible, and I wasn't going to bring this up, but I will. If you study Moses any, Moses was assigned to do things, and almost every time he was told by God to do something, what did he say? "Oh, I can't do that. It's not for me. I'm not able to do that." But then when he accomplished what he was told to do, then he would always go to that same place, which was preventing himself from being in that flow that Reverend Francie was talking about when we were talking about the congregational tithe. And that is why, if you study the Bible any, that he was not the one to bring the people to the promised land, is because he brought them there essentially. I mean, it's like if right there is the promised land and we see it and we're all in here and we have this, if we're thinking like Moses, it's like we can't go there. But what prevents us from going there? Nothing but ourselves, that thought, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you think that does limit you, and if you're praying, meditating, and God has told you to go there, then you probably ought to step out in faith and go there, even though you think that you may not be able to. But you can. It shows itself in our human life many times by miracles in medicine, miracles in life, and any type of, that we call miracles, in anything that we see in life. We see things that happen that may be extraordinary, and we think, "Oh, wow, that is so cool. I wish that would happen to me." Well, it is happening to you all the time, but do we recognize it? Do we accept it as a miracle? I mean, there are so many things that happen in our life, and like I said, we have outside variables, and for me, my experience has been the hardest, I guess, outside variable comes into loved ones, for me. I mean, because when our loved one does something that we can see that isn't the best for them, we take it on ourselves usually. Well, let me see, I do, and I should. I know that it's not my responsibility or my thing, but we do that quite often as human beings, don't we? But in the spiritual sense, we are all one, and we can be there to help someone and assist them, but we can't make them have good in their life. We cannot. It's impossible to make somebody else have good in their life. And so when we're talking about the title of Surrender to Strength, a lot of people, I don't think that we do it that much in unity anymore, but a lot of people look at that first word, surrender, and think of the white flag. And that's not exactly what we're doing. Because the white flag means like, I give up. That's it. I don't know how to do it. I'm overpowered. But that's not exactly what we're doing. Because when we surrender, what we're doing is stopping giving our power in our life. When we do that, we benefit from it and we become stronger because our power goes where? It comes back to us. I talk about financial things a lot, and it's because it just relates to me, and I think numbers are very easy to see. But if you've ever been in a position where I have been before, where bill collectors are calling you because you're behind on your bills and they want their money, what can you do then if you don't have the money? Well, if you have the money and you don't pay them, that's on you, really. You can just change that fairly easily. But if you don't have the money, like it was in my case, what do? You have choices still. And we think that sometimes when somebody's barking at us, someone's being rude to us, that we don't have any choices in the matter. But we do. We have a choice. Because why? Because we're a divine creation just like they are, just like everybody is. Now at that time, we definitely aren't saying that they're a divine creation, are we? If you've ever experienced that, or if you're being yelled at, I'm sure you've ever been yelled at some point. So when we look at that, we have to consider, what are my options here? And your options are numerous if you look at it. So when we get into our life, a lot of people think that our life is predestination, and it's not. It's not a predestined life. There are so many choices that we have and we get to make in life that there's no way that it could be a predestined life. I don't know about you, but I've seen many people have, you think, a dream life, and something that they've done in life tells you that they didn't think it was a dream life. I had a friend, I guess it's a friend from my side, he's actually my boss, president of this company many years ago. And you would think, him and this other man started this company, and it went nationwide and everything, and it did great, and I was working for him. And after I left, many years afterwards, he ended up, you'd think, and talking to him, it was like a dream life, He started from nothing, built up, and financially he was definitely secure, and his family was secure, and all this, everything good was happening. But evidently not in his mind, because he ended up committing suicide. Wow. He tried to make it to where I don't know what happened on the insurance money, it makes no difference. But he tried to make it look like it wasn't by driving his car off of a bridge in this place where, anyway, that's what happened. And you never know what's going on in somebody else's mind. And our task, if you will, I don't think it's a task, but our summons is to follow our mind, but also make sure it's not the human mind getting in the way of our spiritual mind, all right? We have to get into the pre-circulation, because that's our God's idea for you is pre-circulation. That means that whether we understand that the world is limitless, there's no limit to the world, okay? There's no limit to us. There's no limit to you as an individual. So if you have a situation where it's uncomfortable in your life right now, think to yourself, how is it uncomfortable? Why is it uncomfortable? And then, if you can answer those questions, which may be not able to answer, but either way, go to prayer and meditation afterwards and find out what type of response you get. And here's kind of the key when we're in our human mind in prayer and meditation. After you pray, say whatever or think whatever you need to do, still may not get an answer right now. You know, God was talking to this man once, and the man said, well, I know that you gave my friend over there, made him a multimillionaire. All I want to do is do that. And he said, well, God said, well, do you know the difference between that multi-millions of dollars is just like a penny to me? And he said, well, that's all I want, God, is I want one of your pennies. And he said, okay, I'll give it. God said, I'll give it to you in a second. And it didn't show up right quick. And so the guy went to somebody else and asked and told them then the situation, somebody that was spiritually understanding. And he laughed, the guy laughed and said about the situation, well, you know, God's second is like 100 years to us. Yeah. So all I wanted was a penny, but, you know, it takes 100 years to get it in our time. So sometimes the answers to questions, it's not, and I'm not saying that to make you think that it's hard and you won't get what you desire in life, because I think you can focus yourself and get anything you desire in life. And it needs to be on the right order, right? This last few days ago, and I'm not trying to get political, but I'm just going to use it because it's an example. You know, we did that thing in Venezuela. The United States did that. And I've seen a lot of my minister friends just are going crazy. Well, not a lot, a few. Are going crazy and say that we shouldn't have done that. Yet I know people from Venezuela are happy about it. And so, you know, our position as far as individual spiritual beings should be what? Exactly what we did this morning. Pray for the people of Venezuela. Hold them in the highest esteem. Hold them knowing that their light can shine just as bright wherever they're at as we can in a free society. So we don't need to limit ourselves or other people. Sometimes, though, things don't seem to make sense in our human understanding. And that's true. We can probably point to a lot of situations in our life where it doesn't make sense. You know, a child dying, anybody that we love dying, obviously. But when we look at that and we think about it, what is, even from our human sense, what is it that makes it unfair? It's our perception of that person, isn't it? And we, and I'm not saying this is wrong, but we definitely do it. We greedily and selfishly don't want that person to go, right? When sometimes it's easy for us to see if somebody is suffering from a medical deal where the highest good for them is to release and go to the spirit, go back to spirit, right? And so when we consider our spiritual self and we consider that we really are never going to die, it's just our physical body may release, then we understand a little bit easier, at least, that person's, the memories of those persons, those good times that you had with them, will remain with you. And you can keep them or you can't, or you don't. It's up to you, again, a choice that you have, right? The things that don't make sense in our human understanding make total sense in our spiritual understanding. And that's why we need to come to church. We have to experience all that stuff with other people. And it's different, and I know that you've experienced it both ways, but still it's different being here in person than it is being online watching it, right? Yeah. Churches have dwindled in numbers as far as physical appearance because of the idea that we've come to, and Reverend Francie's reading this article that gave her from Dr. Tobin, but we've come to this idea that we've slowly merged into this idea that we can just go online for everything. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's taken or not, but I've instilled in the boys numerous times that Google does not tell you the truth all the time. And you can't say it's Google's fault, really. It's just something, when we learn and we accept new tools in our life and from our human existence, we can use them for whatever we want. Now, it may have been intended for good, but it may not be used for good, right? When the airplane came about, oh, that's a wonder, we can fly like birds now, right? And it was used for good now. Now we have military jets. They don't usually do pretty good things sometimes, right? I'm not saying anything against military jets. I'm just saying the fact that you can turn anything into whatever you want, right? And it's up to us to choose which we're going to do. Are we going to go from our human understanding only, or are we going to go from our spiritual understanding and make sense of things? Because when we surrender to God, we surrender to accepting more of our strength. Now, you may think, well, everybody wants to surrender and get more of their strength, their power back, right? Well, there comes responsibility with that, and that scares some people away. That scares a lot of people away from unity, or from any church, rather. There comes a responsibility. Now, a lot of mainline churches will tell you, well, you come to me, I'll bless you, and I'll forgive all your sins for this week. Come back next week so I can forgive you again, right? Well, unity doesn't have that lie, doesn't tell you that lie, because I am all powerful in my life, but not in yours. Okay? And I can't absolve you of everything that you've done. I can work with you, I can help you get over something that's happened in your life and get you to where you're accepting your power, you're accepting your strength back. But when you do that, you start getting these messages from God. The next thing that you're supposed to do. And so a lot of people get into a comfortable position and they think, okay, I'm just going to hold here. But even in the human life, what do we know for sure? Change is going to happen. It's not going to remain the same way forever. And you know, obviously, when you have kids, you know that. Because you can't just put the stop button on life when you have kids. Oh, they did the most adorable thing the other day. Then guess what happens? They did the meanest thing the other day. I mean, I never, JW's younger than Aiden. And Aiden went, there are stages, believe it or not, in life. Especially as a child, you can see him easy. But, Aiden went through this time where he was kind of mean to JW. And I was so proud of JW because he's never going to do that. He wasn't mean back. He was so nice. Now every once in a while I'll see JW just haul up and hit Aiden for no reason. Or at least I think don't see a reason. And I said, JW, what are you doing? And so, anyway, we go through these things and we hopefully learn from them and we can continue down the road to understand more of our spirituality. But when we accept that strength, and this is why I think another thing, I so appreciate it when we have kids here in the church, in the Unity Church, because we teach them how they have the power within them. They have a direct connection to God. We believe in Jesus. We believe in Unity believes Jesus was our way shower. Okay? But Jesus himself said, you don't have to go to me to have that relationship with God. And then some writers after that kind of made that stuff up. Said, well, we need to go through Jesus to get to God. No, you don't. You're created by God. God is your mother, father, and you have a direct connection to God. And I hope they don't scare anybody with that. Okay? I'm not trying to say that anything else that scares you about that. But that's just the way it is. Our strength, as far as the Fillmore is concerned, is defined as this: the energy of God. Freedom from weakness, stability of character, power to withstand temptation, capacity to accomplish. Okay? So those are all on the human side. The first part is on the spiritual side, the energy of God. And so when we're talking about that first part, though, don't get sidetracked and think that's the energy of God out here. That's the energy of God within you. When I see my kids and my grandkids, I think about, they have the energy, but the same DNA that flows through me flows through them, right? And so we can't separate ourselves, although many times a lot of people try to separate themselves. And staying away from, I'm not trying to guilt anybody, but staying away from church is a way to try to separate your spirituality from your personality. And Clyde will explain to you in Lessons in Truth how it does a great job about your personality is your human self, your human thinking only, and your individuality, which is you still, is your spirituality. But they'll explain that in the book real well. So we have to, though, recognize that the two are inseparable. We cannot separate the two, and we don't want to anyway when we think about it. I think most people in the world, not all, but most people in the world will say, well, I don't understand that our spirit, our soul, whatever you want to call it, lives on forever. But in that understanding, we have to recognize also that that means that you're spiritual. Your spirit, your soul, all of it lives together, or all of it lives forever. So if that's the case, then where do they go? And we've made up this thing called heaven, but heaven can be anywhere. Heaven can be in your life right now, and heaven definitely is in your afterlife, after this physical life. But we all merge into getting that together. And so I love it when I see people of different backgrounds get together and just accept everybody for who they are. I think that we in this Western society, in the United States, have become much better about that, but we've still got some ways to go. But how can we make that progress quicker? Change ourselves, right? To accepting somebody else. Not agreeing with them necessarily on anything, but accepting that they are a child of God also. So we continue with this definition. And it says, strength is physical, mental, and spiritual. But they mean different things. As far as the word strength means something different in the physical, mental, and spiritual. Strength in the physical, think of your strongest person, Arnold Schwarzenegger, whoever. Mental means, now this is where we kind of get confused sometimes too. Strength in our mental sense is recognizing that we really kind of, if you think about it, not physically, but in the generality, have two different brains. Have our physical brain and have that brain hooked into the divine, the I am, the spiritual brain, which allows us to recognize our full strength as far as the mental. Mental strength physically could be, I know what 2 plus 2 is, but everything else, I know this. But also, when we come to the spiritual understanding, we recognize not only the physical stuff, but we recognize it can grow from that. Okay? That's why we have these inventions and all these discoveries and everything. And the spiritual, I think that speaks for itself. That's taking back your power. Because when we take back our power, we recognize that we are able to do anything. All strength, though, all of it originates in spirit. Because what? We're a spiritual being, right? And if we're a spiritual being, nothing goes beyond that. If we are born from spirit, which is kenosis, which is talked about once in the Bible, you don't have to believe it, but that's true. You came from spirit. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to live on in spirit. And each of us get confused sometimes, I think, about going back to spirit. We think of Bill, one of our congregants that just made this transition. We think of Bill in heaven. He's so great, he's in heaven. Well, Bill is in heaven, but Bill's spirit is in heaven. So Bill's spirit is not Bill the personality anymore. It's part of you, part of me. And it can be even here, in our human sense, if we accept it to be. But when we know that our soul goes on to live, it's part of everything. So you're not going to go to heaven and say, hi, Bill, how you doing? Bill's already with you, or whoever. The thought and the word spiritually expressed being the manifestation. So when we think about all strength comes from spirit, what is our assignment, if you will? To go out and deliver that. If you go out and say something rude to somebody, what's the golden rule? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Is that how you'd like to be treated? Probably not. So if you think about that before you say or do something, then you may say or do something in a different way. And all of us can learn that at any time of this physical life, can't we? Yes. I'm so blessed. I think Francie and I are so blessed to be able to raise multiple kids in different generations. Because it's a lot of work, I know, but still, it is a chance for us, and who knows, maybe I'll do it multiple generations still after this, because I need to get it right. I haven't got it right yet, but I'm trying, okay? I'm still trying to do the best thing. So body, soul, action, and thought is all part of what we have control over. So we don't have control over what happens necessarily on the physical, but we do have control over what happens in our spirit and our mind, right? And it's not that you can think about something and make it happen, although you can at some point, but it still is something that you have to practice and continue to be good at. So all of these things are part of our regaining our strength, our full strength, surrendering to the idea of spirit instead of what we see. I mean, I tell everybody out there all the time, it seems like, if the news bothers you, quit watching the news for a while. Please. And the news can bother you easily, can't it? He did this, she did that, whatever. Get to the point where you don't have an obligation to watch the news, okay, or whatever is disturbing you. You don't have an obligation to be in the same room where somebody's degrading you. You don't have that obligation. Maybe your boss, but you know what? They can't do that either. Thank goodness. So surrendering, as far as the definition goes from Fillmore, it says, ability to release any foregone conclusion about any happening in life. Wow. That would be hard, wouldn't it? Because if we want to surrender any foregone conclusion, then that's kind of like saying, oh wow, I'm driving to church this morning and end up at Kroger. Oh, that's what Sandy did this morning?
No.
Oh, your sister was saying it, not me. But if we go into something, it's kind of like this is a good thing about saying maybe something about that in prayer and meditation. When you're gaining back your strength, taking back your power, you do have to release any foregone conclusion. And it's easily seen when we're talking about our loved ones, right? Any parent wants their kids to do great. And what is great? Great is in my mind, isn't it? For them, right? And so, I can definitely tell you this because I had a business and was trying to make it good for my kids because I thought, man, they're going to have a leg up, you know. The business has already started, it's going good, they're going to be able to do good. They didn't want that at all. My great was not their great. So, whatever, we have to release the idea of a foregone conclusion. Allowing oneself to accept individual, my own, which is God's strength, in the situation. So, what do we have to do? We have to bless them and loose them. We have to bless them and let them go. If we're talking about one of our loved ones or someone. From Judges chapter 7, I don't know how many people remember this story, but this says that Gideon was, and everybody, at least a lot of people remember, when they think of Gideon, they think of the Gideon Bible, and it used to be in the hotels, motels everywhere, but it isn't as much anymore. But anyway, and also as a religious sect, but Gideon in the Bible was a character that was a military person, and he was told by God to take over the Midianites and the Amalekites. And so he had this big army amassed, and he was going to go attack them and take them over as instructed by God. And then God came to him the night before the battle and said, okay, you have, how many did you start with? 32,000 men. You have 32,000 men. I want you to release a lot of them to take over, to prove that I'm doing this and not the men that are doing it. God is doing it. And so he kept reducing his forces, kept reducing them, and then God finally said, because he kept reducing them, not enough for God. So God said, in his prayer and meditation, God said, you need to reduce it down to 300 men. And, Gideon was thinking to God, said, 300 men? They've got thousands. 300 men, how am I going to attack thousands of them with 300 men? But he said, okay, God, I'm going to do it. And of course, you know the stories. He ended up winning, and that's what it says, and you can look at it. There were tens of thousands of the other Midianites and Amalekites. So he ends up doing that and winning the battle, of course. And so it was proving that sometimes we think that we are supposed to do something a certain way and then get guidance to do something a different way. And regrettably, a lot of the times we'll do it our way anyway, won't we? And it doesn't work out, and we're sitting there thinking, what's going on? I did my best. Well, but you didn't listen to guidance, right? Okay. So sometimes in our growth as individuals, we must reduce in size in order to grow in size. And so in surrendering to gain more strength, to gain our strength, to gain our power back, sometimes we have to let go of things, right? And I've been using the kids as an example. So I'll use them again. I'm talking about my grown kids when I say these examples, because, the younger ones, a lot of them. We have to reduce our idea of what's good for them, right? Or we have to let go of that, rather. Let go of that. I said reduce it, and that's probably where I'm still at, right? I haven't let go of it all the way, right? But I need to. I have to let go of what I think is good for them, right? Because, to be quite honest, I don't agree with the way some of them, they live, okay? But it's not my choice, is it? It's not my choice at all. They're adults. They can do whatever they want, right? So you have to gain your own strength back, to get your power back, you have to release giving them power, or the power that you're using to try to shape them into something that you want. So anyway, we have to let go of that, and then we can grow back in our own size. Unity Church of Rockdale, and we've gone through this big shift in Unity as an organization. The Unity Church of Rockdale, I think, is a microcosm of the Unity movement. And Unity movement just now merged a couple of organizations that have been separate for a long time, and they were big organizations. They were all Unity, but they looked at things differently, okay? They had different missions. And now we've merged back together, first time since the Fillmores have made their transition, the founders of the Unity movement. But we've merged back together. And I think that we here at this Unity Church of Rockdale is a microcosm of that. Because before that merger, or before we merged back, we were going gangbusters, okay? Everywhere, of course, this is back, let me see, they merged in the 60s, 1960s. I think of things that have happened sometimes, and I think of the date, and I think, that's just, and no, it's been a lot of years now, yeah? Okay, so anyway, it's been a while, right? And so back then, though, all the churches were merging. There was nothing stopping them. There was just no seating in the churches. There was just overflowing and everything. In fact, Reverend Francie and I, this is a long time after that, but in Unity Wichita, we had a guest speaker come in once, and we had to put monitors in the fellowship hall and have people sit out there because there's no room anywhere. But when we had that, sometimes we get to think we're comfortable where we're at. Because it was comfortable. It was comfortable. This is great. We're having a great time. We're having a lot of people go out and spread the word. And so when it doesn't happen that way anymore, we think a lot of different things. Where did we go wrong, whatever. But what we have to do is release the idea of what we had as being comfortable. Okay? Not that we want to make uncomfortable be comfortable. That's not what I'm saying at all, okay? I'm saying that comfortable just looks different now than it did before. Okay? And it's not the same thing, so I don't know if I got that point across, but I'm trying to. Anyway, we must learn and be clear in our understanding. This is perfect for what I just said. In our understanding of the gifts we are trying to share with the world. Not only the Unity movement, although I was taught that by someone else, and Reverend Frank Pounders. Anyway, he always told me, Warren, choose your words carefully, because they mean something, and try to make the words you use to mean what you're saying, and to make it easily understandable what you're saying. So I try. I don't always succeed, but I do try. But when we are clearer about where we want to be and what we want to have happen in our life, then it can happen easier. It's kind of like saying, I'm going to go to Safeway. I don't even know if there's any Safeways on the East Coast anymore. But I'm going to go to Safeway, and I'm going to go a direct route straight there. Or I'm going to go to Safeway down the street here, but I'm going to go to Covington first, and then Atlanta, and then, We got to be clear on what we're doing and what we are going to share with each other. Because we want to, what? Lift up each other. If we don't lift, even if we got somebody that we don't agree with, if we're not lifting them up, guess what? We're only as strong as the weakest chain. The chain is only as strong as the weakest link right there. And so when that happens, we're saying to ourselves. So there are different kinds of gifts, though, but the same Spirit distributes them. There are different kinds of service, but the same Lord. This is from 1 Corinthians 12, 4 through 6. There are different kinds of working, but in all of them and in everyone it is the same God at work. So when we think about other people, my uncle, well, one of my uncles, not all my uncles, but anyway, one of my uncles, he's made his transition, but he was the uncle that everybody wanted not to show up to Thanksgiving, okay? But, I loved him, and he, but still, anyway, neither here nor there. He was so good about not letting things bother him. To the point where he was detrimental, though. He worked at Boeing for a while, the airplane manufacturer, and he had done something that he was getting reprimanded for. Went into the boss's office getting reprimanded, and he laughed at the boss. So it probably, wasn't the best way to convey, you don't have power over me. But it was a good vision in my mind of how other people, what they do, don't have to have power over you. You have the power whether you give it to somebody or not. So keep that power. The same God is working in you as in me. In Unity Church of Rockdale, if Unity Church of Rockdale is to be around in the future, we have to surrender any idea of limitation we have placed in our minds about the church and about ourselves. So, down here, which down here meaning our location as far as geographics, deep south. I think that Unity, in some circles, doesn't have the best name. And they have their preconceived notion about it. But that should not stop us from saying when somebody asks us, because a lot of people here do, what church do you go to proudly say Unity. And if they want to know something about it, and you don't have an answer, or you don't want to, well, here, I'll give you a card. Call Reverend Warren or Reverend Francie and talk about it. But we should be proud of where we go and what we are trying to do. Because we're trying to create an energy in the world that is there already, but needs to be expanded upon to where we don't have things that happen where everybody can get along. Everybody looks at each other where we are spiritual gifts. So once surrendering the thoughts, words, and actions of limitation, we will see our life changing for the good, which is God, and sharing our gifts by becoming stronger in our spiritual sense. And so, I believe and affirm right now that you are the ones who are going to surrender and accept your truth and your strength. Are you ready to do that?
Yes.
You ready to accept the God's strength that you were given when you were born?
Yes.
If you surrender your life and accept your strength, can I hear you say amen?
Amen.
Good deal. And thank you. How I was going to do two of those, I don't know. I want that, when I cut that in half, believe it or not, that's cut in half. So anyway, I got a song for you. And it's a good worded song, but you can listen to it.
Reverend Moore?
Yes, ma'am.
Can I just say something? And we're talking about, different religions and the same God, but this I found such peace. We were going on New Year's Day to Shannon's sister's house.
Right.
And we happened to get to be when the monks were coming right down the road, right beside us. And I got pictures, and it just, okay, they're Buddhists, but this is a walk for peace, and we know we all got the same God. Because some people were like, oh, well, they're not Christian, and stuff in the comments, but anyways, it just touched me so much to walk, to drive by them.
Was that the monastery? No, it wasn't monastery.
No, they're going to
Walk through. Was it Lawrenceville or Loganville?
Huh? Oh,
Where was
in Walnut, well, no, it was Loganville.
County.
Oh, I didn't hear about it. What-
Yeah.
you hear about it?
Still walking around.
Yes, they're walking to
Sure, it was very
Washington.
moving.
They're walking to Washington DC for
I got to
peace.
stand.
They walked through here.
And watch them.
Oh.
Wonderful.
Well, you know, I honor them for a different reason, and I've told this story before, but a walk or I don't even like calling it a protest, but a demonstration of peace is different than a demonstration against war. It's a different mindset, and that's what I was talking about earlier. Clear with our words. It's a different mindset. Think about that for a minute. Praying for peace is different than praying against war. Okay?
Yeah.
When we pray for peace, we're talking about I honor everybody on every side. When we're praying against war, we're picking sides. And you know, usually, well, always you're going to pick your side, right? But you know what? There is God in the other side too. And the bad thing about war and everything is that it's kind of like the old days. Well, not anymore, but you used to have leaders where at some point, if they're going to have a war, would say, if one leader would, not that they wouldn't usually, just have the leaders fight it out. Instead of having all these people that I control fight out my idea. Right? I mean, anyway. Okay, well, I'm glad you shared that because that's interesting. I didn't know, but Francie knew about it. I didn't know about it.
But the monks are so prayerful that I think that's what you pick up on that energy
Right.
of the peace that they are, because they're in that prayerful state.
Right.
We actually got to see them do that sand art before,
Yeah.
and just seeing the concentration and the energy that comes off of them, just being in that like meditative state is powerful. You can feel it.
Yeah, it's amazing that they can do that.
So I could see where you got moved, Sandy, just
Yeah.
going by them, you know, or having them go by you.
And good for you that you're open to that because, you know, sometimes in our business, if we're stuck totally in our human brain, we're not, you know, we can drive by that and not even notice it.
But the other thing about that is, if we all just
I'll
think
share
about,
the picture, or
yeah, but if we all just think about them walking for peace, that we can see them, picture them, or see, you know, even if you see the picture, or just hold it in your minds, you can tap into that collective energy because that's all spirit, that's all God. So we can feel that. Huh?
One of them's got a dog. Yeah.
Well, did you see how some of them were barefoot?
yeah.
Some of them were barefoot, and I'm thinking to myself, that's a little cold. But, you
He's
know,
walking for 23 days or?
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they were staying at the fire station right there.
He started in Texas.
Yeah.
They're taking peace to Washington.
Good.
Yeah.
Spread.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, God, you know, dog is God spelled backwards, so. Just remember that. Can you do that with cat?